Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and our personality today is Rabbi Abraham Geiger, born in 1810 and died in 1874. After a traditional Jewish education as a young man, Geiger entered the University of Bonn, where he was a friend of Rabbi Raphael Hirsch, we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But by this point, his eyes had turned more towards a reformed understanding of Judaism and the Jewish tradition, and he became the great systematizer of Reform Judaism. Even though synagogues and individual preachers had emerged who advocated reform, this had not yet been done on a thought-through and systematic basis, and that is what Geiger brought to the Reform movement. He was a great exponent of the Yiddish Wissenschaft, the attempt to understand Judaism in an academic way, to raise it to the level of the classics as one would study Greek or Roman civilization. He was a great student of the prophets and of the Sadducees and the Pharisees and published on those topics. He founded a Wissenschaft journal and became its first editor in the 1830s. He attended the great synods of Reform rabbis in the 1840s, and there he proposed and supported many important changes to the way the synagogue service was run and which prayers were to be said. He advocated for prayers in the vernacular, in his case German, for the use of the organ, for the removal of such ritual practices as kippah or talit or tefillin. He argued that prayers for the restitution of the temple and the return to the land of Israel should be dropped because Jews were to be considered merely as a religious group within whichever country they happened to live in. The 1830s, 1840s were a time of great struggle about who would control the Jewish communities around Europe, and although the community of Breslau had an Orthodox rabbi in the person of Rabbi Titkin, he became the assistant rabbi in 1838. They had many very difficult disagreements, but when Titkin died in 1843, in that year Geiger became the rabbi of the whole community. Remarkably, he moved to Frankfurt to become the rabbi of the Reform community there, and there he was in the same city as his great ideological opponent, Rabbi Raphael Hirsch. Even though they'd been friends as young men, they were now totally on opposite sides of the ideological debate, and they clashed with each other in print very strongly indeed. He was not only the rabbi of the community of Frankfurt and its Reform section, he was also one of the teachers of the Hochschule, which was the leading seminary for training Reform rabbis in Germany. And therefore he has both a communal and an educational and a scholarly legacy to the Reform movement and is considered one of its greatest founders. Thanks for joining.